Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're going to be diving into something, pretty dark,
Yeah.
pretty tragic, the aftermath of the sinking of the Titanic.
hmm
Now, you might think you know this story.
Yeah.
Have you seen the movie?
Of course.
But we're going to be going beyond, the icy waters, the lifeboats,
Wow.
all that stuff.
No, on the spectacle.
Exactly. To explore, how society was affected, the blame game,
The blame game, yeah.
and how its legacy has continued to, you know,
Evolve.
evolve,
Yeah.
for over a century.
Absolutely.
So for this deep dive, you've given us a ton of material.
Yeah, a really interesting mix.
Yeah, we got firsthand accounts, historical analysis.
Even some poetry.
Yeah.
It's going to be a fascinating one.
Buckle up, folks, because we're about to uncover the human stories.
The hidden depths.
Yeah, of the Titanic's long shadow.
What's really fascinating to me is how this disaster became more than just, a maritime tragedy.
Right.
It became like this mirror reflecting the values and anxieties
Of the time.
of the time, exactly.
It's crazy how quickly those narratives kind of form.
Oh, yeah.
Imagine like you're in Southampton.
Right.
Or Liverpool.
Where all the crew members lived.
Exactly, and you hear everyone's safe.
Initially.
Yeah.
And then,
The truth comes out.
and it's devastating.
I mean, the way news traveled back then, it's just...
So different from today. That
Yeah.
initial optimism,
Right.
based on unreliable information,
Right.
just makes the eventual blow so much harder.
Yeah, and it makes you think about,
Our instantaneous news cycle now.
exactly.
Wow.
We even have accounts of Prime Minister Asquith,
Weeping openly
Yeah.
when he learned the true scale of the loss.
Yeah.
Not exactly the stiff upper lip you'd expect
Yeah.
from a British leader.
Speaking of expectations, let's talk
Mhm.
about
Mm.
the survivor's guilt.
Oh, yeah. It's a huge part of this story.
It wasn't just the trauma of the event.
Right.
It was,
A lifelong burden
Yeah.
for so many.
like we have the story of Charlotte Collier.
Oh, gosh, yes.
She died only 2 years after the sinking.
Couldn't cope
Yeah, just unable to cope.
with the loss of her husband
Right, and the weight of surviving.
when so many others didn't.
Yeah.
Haunting, isn't it?
And hers is not the only story.
Sadly, no.
We have Jack Thayer.
The young boy
Yeah, he survived
went on to have a successful career,
as a banker.
but took his own life in 1945.
Wow.
Even Frederick Fleet,
The lookout.
the lookout who first spotted the iceberg,
Yeah.
he met a similar fate in 65.
It's just,
These recurring suicides, particularly among those separated from loved ones,
it's chilling.
it really paints a picture of the psychological toll.
Yeah, it really makes you think about the lasting impact
Hmm.
of an experience like that.
Trauma.
Yeah, like what we call PTSD today.
Right, right.
Do you think they had, the support?
The understanding.
Yeah, the understanding we have today for mental health.
That's a great question. And, historians and psychologists, they're still exploring this.
Yeah.
The sources we have, they don't give us
Specific details
specific details.
about, what kind of support was available.
But it's probably safe to say that the understanding and treatment of trauma was vastly different back then.
Yeah.
I mean, the concept of PTSD as we know it today
Didn't even exist.
didn't even exist
Really highlights how far we've come.
in terms of mental health awareness.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
This tragedy also fueled,
A need to find someone to blame,
right.
someone accountable.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
How blame was assigned after the sinking.
Well, one figure who became a lightning rod for criticism
Okay.
was Bruce Ismay,
Okay.
the managing director of White Star Line.
Okay.
He became almost synonymous
With the disaster.
with the disaster, yeah.
Even though.
He was cleared by the British inquiry.
Right.
It's interesting, though, how the American inquiry, led by Senator William Alden Smith, had a completely different tone.
Yeah, it seemed to become...
Almost a platform for populist outrage.
Yeah.
You have to consider the context.
Okay.
This was the era of muckraking journalism,
Right.
growing distrust of big businesses, the concentration of wealth.
Yeah.
So the American public,
Right.
they were primed to see Ismay,
Okay.
as you know, the embodiment of corporate negligence,
Right.
disregard for safety.
And then, of course, there's the James Cameron film,
Oh, yes.
which,
Visually stunning.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
not exactly historically accurate.
Yeah, not exactly.
And it definitely didn't help Ismay's image.
No, Cameron's portrayal
Yeah.
really cemented Ismay as a villain
In the public eye.
on popular culture.
It's a really interesting example
Mm-hmm.
of how narratives can be shaped and reshaped over time.
Oh, absolutely.
Decades after the actual event.
Even centuries.
Wild.
Yeah.
Speaking of shaping narratives,
Mhm.
it's interesting to see how the Titanic was woven into, you know.
National stories. Like
Yeah.
Churchill,
Yeah.
he viewed it as a testament to British heroism
Right.
and self-sacrifice.
Like almost a validation of...
A worldview. It's
Yeah.
very telling,
Yeah.
Churchill's view.
Hmm.
While maybe a bit problematic from a modern lens,
Right.
offers us a glimpse into those deeply ingrained notions
Of national identity.
of national identity. Exactly.
And we have the Bishop of Winchester,
Oh, yes.
who saw the sinking.
As divine retribution.
Yeah, for extravagance and arrogance.
The woke bishop of his time, some might say.
Yeah.
I mean, his viewpoint almost foreshadows
Our modern anxiety.
climate change.
Yeah, and unsustainable consumption.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
How his concerns
Yeah.
from over a century ago still resonate today.
It makes you wonder if,
Does the event itself hold this power?
Mm-hmm.
Or are we projecting our own anxieties onto it?
Yeah, it's like the Titanic keeps offering new lessons.
As our world changes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But before we dive into all that, the symbolism, the evolving interpretations,
Right.
let's take a quick break.
Okay.
When we get back, we'll explore how the Titanic still captivates us.
And how its legacy is far from settled.
Stick with us.
We'll be right back. Each generation seems to find new meaning in the Titanic.
It's true.
Like it reflects our own
Fears.
anxiety.
Yeah, it's not just the event itself. It's
Mhm.
how we interpret it
Exactly.
that gives it that staying power.
That's what makes it so fascinating.
Which brings us to its symbolism.
Mm-hmm.
The Titanic is everywhere.
It really is.
I mean, books, films.
The academic analysis.
We can't talk about the Titanic without talking about James Cameron's film,
Oh, of course.
the blockbuster.
Oh, yeah.
The one that launched 1,000 debates about...
Historical accuracy.
Yeah,
Visually stunning, of course.
amazing.
But Cameron definitely took
Liberties.
liberties. Yeah.
Creative liberties.
Especially with figures like Ismay
Right.
to craft a more compelling narrative.
Right. It's not a documentary.
No.
But beyond the historical debates,
Mm-hmm.
I'm struck by how people interpret the ship itself.
Oh, yeah.
Like some see it as this grand...
Almost phallic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Symbol of male ambition.
That drive to conquer nature.
Right.
Push boundaries.
Ecological boundaries.
Exactly.
But then there's the counter argument.
Right.
Viewing the ship through Rose
Ooh.
as a representation of escape.
From societal constraints.
Yeah, she's trapped.
In this stifling engagement bound by expectations.
Yeah, the Titanic becomes her vessel.
Literally and figuratively.
To break free.
I love that.
So one ship,
Two completely different readings.
but both kind of valid.
Precisely. The Titanic acts as this cultural prism,
I like that.
refracting our own beliefs.
Back at us.
Back at us?
Like take the immediate reactions to the sinking.
Oh, yeah.
In Britain, it was all about self-sacrifice.
Women and children first.
Playing into that image of British chivalry.
Exactly. We even have sources mentioning these giant sand sculptures.
Guts.
Yeah, erected to celebrate this ideal.
Wow.
It was quickly absorbed into the national mythos.
Reinforcing that narrative of British strength.
Strength and resilience.
Across the Atlantic, though.
Very different.
The American response was all about...
Blame, finding someone to hold accountable.
We have to understand the context, though, right?
Of course.
The U.S. was going through a lot of change.
Huge social and economic change.
Yeah, the rise of industrial capitalism.
The widening gap between rich and poor.
Yeah, it fueled this resentment
Toward corporate power.
the wealthy elite
And Ismay, as the face of White Star Line,
became the perfect target
he became the scapegoat.
for all that anger.
Exactly.
So the Titanic became this lightning rod.
For anxieties about class
Power.
and the unchecked ambition of the Gilded Age.
It all kind of came crashing down.
It's reflected in the American inquiry.
Which maybe lacked the rigor of its British counterpart,
Yeah,
but it tapped into that populist sentiment.
totally.
Ismay was painted as this reckless capitalist.
Prioritizing profit over safety.
Classic villain.
And the fact that he was British
Probably didn't help.
added to that.
Us versus them.
Yeah.
Dynamic.
But it's interesting
What's interesting is
that both interpretations.
the British focus on heroism,
Right.
the American emphasis on blame.
They reveal as much about the societies themselves
Absolutely.
as they do about the actual event.
It's a reminder that even in the face of tragedy,
We tend to see what we want to see,
we filter events through our own pre-existing beliefs.
which brings us back to the power of the Titanic.
Right.
It's not just a historical event.
It's a cultural touchstone,
Yeah.
a blank canvas.
onto which we project our own narratives,
Our anxieties.
our hopes,
Each generation finds
new meaning.
new lessons.
Absolutely.
Speaking of lessons,
Mm.
our sources highlight this idea
Okay.
that the sinking was seen as a cautionary tale.
Against hubris.
Yeah. Does that still hold weight today?
Absolutely. In an age grappling with climate change,
Yeah.
resource depletion,
Mm-hmm.
the potential downsides of rapid technological advancement.
It's like this big metaphor
It is a metaphor.
for the consequences of pushing too far too fast.
Exactly. And that's why, even over a century later,
It's still fascinating.
it provokes,
Yeah.
it speaks to our deepest fears
And anxiety.
about our place in the world
It's like we're all passengers.
on this metaphorical Titanic,
Yeah.
navigating the uncertainties of life.
Facing challenges that could sink us.
If we're not careful,
That's a powerful analogy.
and maybe that's why
It continues to grip us.
our collective imagination
Yeah, it's a reminder.
of the fragility of human endeavor.
It's a hubris of believing we can control our destiny.
Right.
Even with all our technological advancements,
Mm-hmm.
we're still vulnerable
To unforeseen events.
to forces greater than ourselves.
The Titanic is a powerful symbol of that,
It is.
that humbling truth.
But even with the tragedy,
Mm.
the lessons
There's also this incredible resilience.
of the human spirit,
You see it in the acts of courage,
self-sacrifice,
the stories of survival against all
of
odds
families and communities that rebuilt.
after unimaginable loss.
It's like the Titanic encapsulates.
the whole spectrum of human experience.
Yeah, the good, the bad.
The incredibly complex,
And that's what makes it so,
fertile
yeah,
for exploration,
for discussion.
whether you're drawn to the history,
There's a social commentary.
the human drama.
The Titanic has something for everyone.
It really does.
It's a story that keeps on giving.
And that's what's so great about these deep dives.
Yeah.
We're not just rehashing information.
We're engaging with it,
questioning, interpreting.
finding new layers of meaning,
That's the key.
active engagement.
It's not enough to just passively consume information.
Right.
We need to grapple with it,
Wrestle with the implications.
allow it to challenge our perspectives.
And maybe that's the most valuable lesson the Titanic offers.
What's that?
That reminder to stay curious, to keep asking questions,
Yeah.
and to never take our own safety
Or the resilience of the human spirit.
for granted.
Well said.
Yeah, it really is a powerful image, isn't it?
It is.
Us on this metaphorical Titanic.
Just trying to navigate life.
Yeah. But even with that, fragility, you also mentioned the resilience of the human spirit.
Oh, absolutely.
And we see that in the aftermath.
In the individual stories.
Yeah.
That's what makes this event so compelling.
Mm.
Even after all this time,
Yeah.
we have those accounts of incredible courage,
Yeah.
selflessness in the face of fear.
Unimaginable fear.
And, beyond the immediate survival,
Right.
we see that strength
Of those who rebuilt,
rebuilt their lives. Yeah.
honored the memories of those they lost.
It's powerful stuff.
One of the sources you shared was
Yes.
a collection of poetry written in response to the sinking.
It's a remarkable collection.
They capture such raw emotion,
Grief, anger, confusion.
even some hope.
Yeah, it's a reminder that even in the darkest times,
Mm.
the human spirit finds a way to express itself.
To process trauma, to seek meaning.
Exactly.
It's fascinating how art and literature
Become these outlets.
for collective grief.
reflection.
Yeah. And for the Titanic, these creative interpretations.
They just keep emerging.
Even today.
New books, films, music.
It speaks to the power of this one
To
event
capture our imaginations.
across generations.
Yeah. It's not just history.
It's a story that resonates.
On a human level.
That's what makes these deep dives so rewarding.
Absolutely.
It's not just facts and figures.
Right.
It's exploring,
The human condition.
yeah,
The complexities of our shared history.
how events from the past
And
can teach
reflect
us
of
about their...
ourselves, the world we live in today.
Exactly.
And with the Titanic,
Mm-hmm.
it feels like there's always more to uncover.
More perspectives. More lessons to be learned.
It's true. History is never truly settled.
Yeah. It's an ongoing conversation.
And as we engage with these stories,
Right.
we're not just revisiting the past,
We're shaping our understanding of the present.
maybe even influencing the future.
So as we wrap up this deep dive
Into the aftermath,
and legacy of the Titanic,
we're left with a lot to ponder.
the tragedy, The heroism,
The blame.
the evolving interpretations.
So complex.
A complex tapestry.
It invites us to consider our own values.
Anxiety.
Our place in this grand narrative of human history.
It's been a fascinating exploration.
It has.
And for our listeners,
Yes.
we leave you with this question.
Okay.
What threads of the Titanic story will you carry with you?
Good question.
How does it inform your understanding of the world today?
I like that.
We encourage you to continue this deep dive.
On your own.
Explore the sources we've discussed.
Find new ones.
And, as always,
Yes.
if you enjoy this exploration
Of history's mysteries.
and turning points
Be sure to subscribe
to the deep dive.
for more captivating journeys into the past.
Until next time,
Keep exploring
keep questioning.
and keep diving deep.